Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. That's right, we actually have some Path of Exile 1 news for the first time in a while. The end of 3.25 private league events have been announced. Now, there's a fair bit of detail in this post, so I want to go through it, but also let's just start with what's going to be bad news for some people. That is, the Legacy of Phrecia event is going to be concluding in a few hours' time. Legacy of Phrecia comes to an end April 23rd in the United States, so probably April 24th in my area of the world, and 326 is not coming until June. So with that in mind, they're going to be running the Private League Templates event that they mentioned earlier. This is a whole bunch of detail on how that's going to work. So there are going to be 15 Private League templates added for PC. You'll be able to create one of these private leagues, and it'll be free. So normally it costs quite a bit of money to run a large scale private league. They're going to allow up to 20,000 players in each event. Now, the thing with a private league is that it's a halfway house between solo self-found and trade league. And in my opinion, and obviously not everyone will agree with this, but in my opinion, it does it better than either of those two game modes does. So you can cooperate with other players, you can trade with other players, but you also have somewhat of a walled garden around those trades. You can only trade with a modest number of other people. One of the things I really like about this small to medium-sized trade league economy is that there's just simply less of a payoff for bad behavior than there can be in a normal full-on trade league. So for instance, all those price fixers, people who post a listing with no intention to sell the item, their sole purpose is to mislead other people into thinking that the item is worth less than it is. Those people don't really tend to exist in private leagues because there's simply not enough trade counterparties for them to be able to get very many hits on them. Likewise, there's a whole bunch of other bad actors in trade leagues, such as people who engage in RMT cheating, i.e. trading real world money for in-game items. That sort of cheating doesn't really tend to happen in private leagues because, again, it's a smaller economy. But even if we avoid some of the bad behavior type things, there's also just a very different dynamic when you're in an environment where there's just simply not enough vivid vultures to make an absolutely perfect mirror tier triple perfect synth implicit ring. And what do you end up seeing instead? Well, you see people using vivid vultures and other similar pieces of loot in order to improve existing gear rather than using it to try and create the absolute perfect gear. And so you end up being able to use some of these resources that you might have otherwise traded away in a different league environment. So that's some of the appeal of private league events. The other thing is that if you do get something that's a fantastic drop, but that's something that you don't have any personal use for, like say you're playing a Deadeye and you get a Defiance of Destiny drop, well, in that situation, it still is a milestone drop because you can turn around and trade it to another player. Whereas if you're in solo self-found, it just is a feel-bads moment unless you're willing to start up a new character for that item. So those are some of the reasons I've always liked private league events. I've run a few of them myself back when they've been paid, but during this promotion, they're not going to cost anything to run. On top of that, often you'll get to know the other players that are there. Most of my in-game friends have been met while playing in private leagues. Now, private league templates are a bit more restrictive than the normal private league setup. You can't add your own modifiers the way you normally would be able to. However, what Granny Games are going for here is a whole bunch of different options that you can choose between. All of these are going to be based on Settlers League, so if you want the town, you don't have to set it up again. If you're willing to forego the town, then you can completely ignore it. For people that want something that is recognizably close to the core difficulty of Path of Exile 1, then you can play in just Settlers. This will have no fundamental changes from the base game. Or you can play with Idols replacing the Atlas. Or you can play with the Legacy of Phrecia alternate ascendancies replacing the core 19 ascendancies. Or you can play the Necro Settlers setup. Necro Settlers was an event that Granny Games ran back in November of last year. It was kind of chaotic. It's a high risk, high reward setup that also has a number of fiddly things that you can do to further boost your loot. Then there's Shifting Stones, which is something that I don't think is going to work that well unless they really nail it. In each area, you'll encounter a league mechanic that's been enhanced by a corresponding Atlas keystone. So for instance, you might encounter Ultimatum, but you also have one of the Ultimatum keystones in play. However, these will change every 15 minutes. So this means that if you and I both open the same map at roughly the same time, we're going to see the same modifier present in that league. So it might be this area contains the Trial Master and also has one of the Ultimatum Keystones in play. But 15 minutes later, it might instead have shifted on, and you might be looking at Expedition with the AoE nuke instead. It's going to keep changing around like that. The reason I'm not sold on that being an exciting choice long term is that there's only so many Atlases you can have, and only so many Scarabs you probably keep on your character in any sort of bulk. And what that means is that you're going to be finding out that a mappers say, this time this is Ultimatum, but you don't actually have all the Scarabs pre-planned, and you've only got 15 minutes if you wanted to do anything with them. Or maybe you find out that this time it is Ultimatum, and you don't have an Ultimatum Atlas at all. So I'm not sold on shifting stones, but by all means, give it a go if it sounds like it'd be fun for you. However, they are also doing a couple of other things that are looking really interesting. They are also providing the option of playing any of those 5 templates, but with Gauntlet mods. Gauntlet mods, and this is probably going to be what I choose to run. This is PathOfExile with extremely, extremely difficult mods in play. These are going to start from the beginning of the game, and they're just going to get worse as you progress through the campaign. Then you get a bit of a reprieve when you get to white maps, but they get really serious when you get into yellow and then red maps again. On top of that, the Gauntlet modifiers cause all of the major milestone progression bosses that you encounter to be way harder. So this is completely opt-in. If you're not interested in the extra difficulty, you don't join a private league that has it. But if that does sound like it's something that could be refreshing and fun, then you'll be able to play around with these Gauntlet mods that were made for a high-profile race event a little while ago. Another huge difference, though, is that when the Gauntlet originally ran, it was a hardcore solo self-found event only. There was no option to play around with those encounters in softcore or in trade. Well, what it looks like here, and I'm not 100% certain I'm right on this, but just from reading this, it looks like you'll be able to play with the Gauntlet mods without playing the hardcore or the solo self-found rule set. So what I'm thinking of doing here is setting up and running a private league event that will have the alternate ascendancies, but none of the other alternate rule sets, but that will also have the Gauntlet mods whilst remaining trade enabled and softcore. That's going to be something I think will be quite different to the core PathOfExile experience. And of course, for people that want a different combination, you can always set up your own event and run it as well. On top of that, there's also going to be a few new options that are available, some new events for people who want to mix and match a couple of existing things. So you can have Affliction, which I assume simply means that there's an entrance to the Wildwood in every zone, like it was in 3.23. Or you can have the Idol system with the Lake of Calandra, or you can have alternate ascendancies and sentinels together. So you'll be able to play around with the Phrecia ascendancies, but also probably every zone has a sentinel, or maybe it'll be itemized sentinels again. Details of exactly how that work aren't exactly clear. I don't know if they'll be using 3.25 era sentinels or whether it will be 3.18 era sentinels. But whatever the case, that will be something that will be interesting to play around with. Or you go with possibly one of the highest juice options, which is going to be Necro Settlers and Beyond. You'll end up with all of the craziness of Necro Settlers, but on top of that, you'll also have Beyond monsters. Now, the reason that I say these two synergize well together is that Necro Settlers increases the number of monsters in zones typically, and by quite a significant amount, because it will replace some packs of monsters with extremely, extremely dense packs like rats and frogs, and those will then cause the Beyond monsters to spawn in larger numbers than usual. On top of that, you also have Shifting Stones and Atlas Invasion. So the Shifting Stones mechanics we talked about a little bit earlier. Atlas Invasion was an event they ran, if I recall correctly, maybe at the end of 2021, maybe it was 2022. Each area is going to have a whole bunch of bosses. So you might be running through the ledge and suddenly you get attacked by the Shaper. Now this will not be the Shaper at monster level 84 or 85. Instead, it will be the Shaper scaled down to the monster level of the ledge. This is extremely wild, and I would strongly suggest considering joining in a Shifting Stones and Atlas Invasion event if you're someone that doesn't usually get to encounter some of the crazier endgame bosses. Now, there's going to be a post next week following up on this that'll have more information in this, such as when the events will begin. And once more, my personal plans at the moment are leaning towards going with the alternate ascendancies rule set, the Gauntlet rule set, and playing with the softcore and trade-enabled rules applied to it. That's assuming that that exact combination is an option. We know that you can combine alternate ascendancies with the Gauntlet rule set. We don't yet know whether the Gauntlet rule set is hardcore solo self-found only, or whether you'll be able to mix and match a little bit more. That's my plans at the moment though, and I will make a post once we've got enough information that I can set a time for that. Until then, I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlorbs have interesting results.